Oil prices higher today after that Truth Social post from America's president who warned, quote, a whole civilization will die tonight, never to be brought back if the Iranian regime does not agree to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. In addition, the Americans conducted overnight strikes on what they say are military targets on Iran's Karg Island. That's a crucial piece of oil infrastructure. Let's bring in Matt Smith, lead oil analyst at Kpler. Matt, thanks very much for joining us. Hard to know where to begin. What do you think is what are the one or two things that oil investors should be bearing in mind right now?
Well, I think, Andrew, going into this 8 p.m. deadline, we have President Trump that wants to de-escalate here. We have the Iranians that don't want a ceasefire. And so with that in mind, we should expect that deadline to pass, and we should expect escalation from the US side of things in terms of bombings, whether that is the targeting of energy infrastructure, bridges, etc. If that happens, we should expect a natural escalation from Iran. The challenge with that is that that could be targeting Saudi assets. It could be targeting anything in the Strait of Hormuz, but it also brings the Red Sea into play as well, which they've mentioned before. You know, the Houthis have taken a backseat for the moment, but they could be called upon as things get ratcheted up from here.
Yeah, we've seen there's an intraday for oil. Maybe you could put up a one-year price for oil. Of course, we keep focusing on the main U.S. futures contract, but oil prices around the world, actual physical oil prices have, in many cases, perhaps in nearly all cases, gone above $140 US now.
Yes, that's right. And so what you're seeing is these differentials in the prices. So you see just with a dated Brent price, a price to buy in the North Sea there, that is well above $140. That is hitting a record. But you're seeing it in the physical differentials as well. So you will see Latin American crude, West African crude, etc., pricing at a Brent plus a very large premium on top of that. So yeah, perhaps these key benchmarks are not necessarily a fair reflection of where we actually are.
And dated Brent is a vital global oil benchmark. It's essentially oil for prompt delivery, physical oil.
Correct, that's right. And the dated being you set the date when you actually take that collection, and so that price is obviously ripping higher, fair reflection there. But you've got to consider diesel, jet fuel. We're seeing those prices way higher per barrel than you are seeing crude, you know. So that's the challenge here. You also have to look along the forward curve too, and that expectation, you know, that we had even just a month or two ago in terms of prices have been thrown out the window. Even if, as and when this situation gets resolved, we are going to be in a higher oil price environment just because of all the risks that are going to be on people's radar that weren't previously.
I know. Maybe we'll even have to change the price charts for now we're showing on BNN because the future is going up, but it's kind of misleading in that sense. You guys have a time lapse for us portraying traffic through the Strait of Hormuz. What is it telling us?
So actually, Andrew, there has been a pickup in recent days here. So yesterday we saw 7 vessels passing through, Sunday 11, Saturday there was 10, 14 on Friday. And so we have seen a rise. Prior to that, we were only kind of seeing a handful passing through there. Key thing to bear in mind here is that still half of these, probably more, are Iranian crude tankers. So their own crude is passing through as normal, whereas everybody else is either passing through because of humanitarian reasons, that i.e. they've been given the nod to pass through by Iran, or potentially they are paying some type of toll to pass through there.
We have seen this odd situation where Brent futures went below WTI, and that's how unusual is that?
That's right, but you've got to look at the contracts too in terms of we're on the May contract, right, for WTI right now, whereas Brent has already moved on to June. So that's probably a fair reflection of things, what's happening there.
The Red Sea is, of course, on the other side of Saudi Arabia, and could that emerge as a choke point as well?
Andrew, I think this is the biggest risk. And if this happens, this takes prices to another level in that you have Saudi Arabia, it has rerouted nearly 4 million barrels a day of its crude from loading in the Mideast Gulf to loading at Yanbu there. The majority of that crude is heading south and going to Asia, passing by Bab el-Mandeb. If you are going to see escalation after 8 p.m. this evening by the US, you should expect a natural retaliation from Iran. And that next step seems to be, it makes sense, right? That they would then try and stop that traffic. And the challenge with that, Andrew, is then you collect all of those tankers. There's a lot of Saudi tankers that are basically sat there in the Red Sea waiting to load, because there's no point in them going and sitting outside the Mideast Gulf, because the Saudis obviously don't think this is going to get resolved anytime soon here. So those tankers, they only have the option, if they can't go south, is to go up partially loaded through the Suez Canal, go through the Mediterranean, all the way around Africa to go into Asia, which takes about 4 weeks. And so I think if we do see things escalate from the US and Israeli side here, that's where we go to next from Iran.
Yeah, there's another choke point there at the mouth of the Red Sea between Djibouti and Yemen, in this case, where the latter is where the Houthis are active. Matt, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Matt Smith, lead oil analyst at Kpler.